Welcome to the Athlete Insights Podcast, hosted by Yash Padhye, a podcast focused on letting athletes tell their journeys in their sport. This podcast is presented by Boxed Water. Boxed water is better.
Welcome into another episode of the Athlete Insights Podcast. Today I have former UNC wrestler. He's now a sport psychologist. He's an adjunct instructor at Colorado Mesa, Jacob Seeley. So Jacob, thank you so much for taking the time this morning. I know it's a little early, 8:30, but taking the time this morning to come on and provide your insights and from your wrestling career to kind of where you are now in that regard. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be on and talk, and I like being up early, so this is perfect time for me.
Yeah,
I'll
I
be
get
at-
up.
I'll be
Yeah,
at
no,
peak.
I'm an early bird as well, so I can relate on that regard
Yeah.
as well. But we'll kind of, like I said, we'll touch on kind of your early start into athletics and then kind of where you are now. So
hmm
beginning with that is, what was your earliest kind of memory, or starting off with that earliest memory in wrestling, or when you were,
Oh
when you
well.
were kind of like, I want to pursue wrestling? What was your earliest memory with that?
I don't think I liked wrestling. So we could go a ways back. I didn't like wrestling for a long
Okay.
time. It just ended up being what I was best at.
Got
I really wanted to be a football player, actually.
it.
If you know anything about, I was a tight end for a while.
Yeah.
You ever heard of Tony Gonzalez? Like that was my hero.
Got you.
And I was like kind of a bigger kid and was like, maybe I could do that. But once I got into high school and it was my freshman year, when I placed at state my freshman year, it was like that's kind of when things started clicking. It was like, okay, I'm gonna go all in on this. And that was then the mission was to be a state champ and go on to give myself a chance to hopefully be a Division I national champ. And that's kind of when the whole thinking and thought process changed into something where it was a lot more time and energy was being dedicated towards wrestling. Because before it was kind of like, I don't know, I just kind of did it. And then after that, I think I really started to fall in love with it and just kind of came into my own and started maturing. And I was a real late bloomer too. I was a beanpole until I was like probably 17 years old. I was super skinny. So
So you said, yeah, that kind of led into kind of what I wanted to talk about as well. You said football was kind of that other sport at the youth level
yeah.
that you played. Did you play anything else? Was it just football and wrestling? Were there other sports involved when you were a kid?
I mean, I think I played everything when I was
Okay.
growing up. I
Gotcha.
remember playing baseball and I think I even played some soccer.
Gotcha.
I wasn't any good at any of those.
Gotcha.
But I even played some basketball at one point in eighth grade just to play with my buddies.
Gotcha.
I had one double-digit scoring game. The worst free throw percentage you've ever seen in your
Gotcha.
entire life. But I think up until high school, I probably played everything except like hockey or something like that. I'm sure I missed a few,
Mhm.
but once I got to high school, then I just focused on football and wrestling, and then eventually later in high school, I made the switch completely over to wrestling. Then, ironically, my senior year, I didn't win a state title my junior year, so I was like, well, I may as well just play football
Yeah.
in my senior year and play with my buddies. And so I came back and played football my senior year, but
Gotcha.
switched to only those two once I got into high school.
Gotcha. And kind of
Mhm.
let's talk about that since you did mention high school there.
Mhm.
Can you describe your high school experience as you kind of narrowed your focus from youth sport to now you're solely focused on football and wrestling? Can you describe and talk about your high school experience over the course of those 4 years and kind of making that switch um, later in that high school career?
Yeah, I think I was very achievement oriented.
Mhm.
Like I mentioned the state medal, like placing at state my freshman year having a lot to do with why I eventually chose wrestling.
Mhm.
But I was very, very achievement oriented and wanted to like I really like to win.
Mhm.
If I could put it, if I could put it simply, like a lot of my identity was around that and winning and being and trying to be the best that I and trying to be the best I could be and going out and winning and being dominant. And
Mhm.
as that kind of built and I started developing physically and technically and getting a lot better at wrestling really, really fast.
Mhm.
That's where like it like that part of me became a lot stronger. That part of me became it
Mhm.
really, I think really took over through high school to the point where I mean it was a little maniacal towards the end. Like everything was kind of centered around being a state champ, being a national champion, and everything kind of hinged on that for a long time.
Mhm.
Even I think even up into college, it was a lot of the way I thought, but definitely started in high school. But so I would say it was there were some good and bad aspects to that though,
Yeah.
where I achieved a lot of my goals late in my career where I was a state champ. I won Fargo, I won Virginia Beach,
Mhm.
like but everything hinged on it. I don't know that I took time to my high school coach always said drink the Kool-Aid, which is his way of saying enjoy it.
Mhm.
I don't know if I was so focused on just winning the next thing that I don't know that I did a real good job of that and probably didn't until really even late into my college career where I had
Yeah.
to kind of through the injuries. And ironically, I'm recovering from a shoulder surgery right now, so this is perfect.
Mhm.
But yeah, but it took until late into my college career to understand what that meant, and that all started in high school, just trying to win. And really, that was kind of the only thing that mattered to me at that time, and really for a long time. It took a long time for my identity to not be set in that. And
Mhm.
that definitely started pretty early. And I do think it started with that first state medal. And it's probably why I transitioned to only wrestling and why my thought processes were kind of the way that they were for a long time.
Mhm. And it is, and like we were talking about off camera a little bit and off
Mhm.
record is important to kind of enjoy the little things and the growth over time.
Yeah.
No, it's great that, and I was kind of the same way in high school. I played golf, just wanted to
Nice.
be really good at golf. Never
Mhm.
really took the time to really enjoy the high school
Mhm.
experience and the other things and things of that nature. And so, I can
Yeah.
totally relate with that. And so,
Mhm.
with that being said, and kind of you going through your high school experience,
Mhm.
how did your recruiting process go, and how did you end up choosing, or how did you end up at Northern Colorado?
We're going we're going way back now.
Okay.
I mean, it's like yeah, 2014, because I mean, I was at UNC for 7 years, so
Yeah.
that was yeah, it's funny. There's like a small era of UNC wrestling where I'm not a part of it,
Oh, yeah.
the last couple of years,
Yeah.
but no, the recruiting process really started at Fargo or after Fargo,
Mhm.
my junior year, which is the biggest high school wrestling tournament in the country.
Yeah.
Um, I was kind of I was kind of under the radar before that, where I was like getting recruited by like D2s from Colorado and some smaller schools, and was kind of teetering on the edge of if I was like, will I even be able to wrestle at the level I went to
Yeah.
in college? But went out and had a really good tournament at Fargo, almost beat the number one guy in the country, and had a couple of really good wins and placed seventh there, and and got an All American status.
Mhm.
But then at that point, it got crazy. It was like I was like I think the best story that illustrates this is I was actually picking up this girl in high school for a date, and
Mhm.
I'm just getting like calls from coaches that are keeping me from
Oh,
going in and picking her up so we could go bowling or whatever. So
yeah.
it got pretty crazy pretty quick. I remember it being really fun. Just, I'd worked a long time to, be like a recruit and get to
Mhm.
go through that, but certainly stressful at the same time. You're making a pretty big decision like in the 17, 18-year-old as to what you're going to do for the next 4 years or so. And yeah, and a bunch of your heroes are trying to get you to go to their schools.
Yeah.
So it was
And
really cool, but really stressful. And I remember, but I do remember the day that Nickerson got the job at UNC. Nickerson, and this is funny.
okay.
Troy Nickerson is the first college wrestler that I was ever a fan of. That like 20 watching him win the
Mhm.
national championship in 2010
Yeah.
over, I think it was Donahue from Edinburgh.
Mhm.
I might be drawing a blank right now.
Okay.
But I remember watching that match and cheering for Troy Nickerson
Yeah.
as probably like a middle schooler.
Hmm.
And so when I saw that he got the job there, I was like, I would certainly consider UNC if they recruited me.
Hmm.
And then that summer at Fargo, that year, I kind of broke out. Nickerson was at Fargo coaching part of the Colorado national team, and got to know him really well and have a really good relationship. And he got me out. That was my first and last official visit because I committed and was like, yep, this is the spot. He really sold me on the vision that we've kind of seen pieces of come to fruition now. And which I think the biggest indicator of that is seeing Andrew Lirez win the national championship last year. Like that was something that we had been building towards for a while.
Yeah.
And it was super special. My dream was obviously always that, it was going to be me.
Hmm.
But, it was, I was there 7 years helping, you know, trying to help build that program and that culture.
Yeah.
And so to see him do that, it was like just as good. It was just as good as if I would have won it. It is what I found out. It was, I think, like it's one of the happier moments of my life, just because, Andrew's one of my good friends.
Yeah.
I've seen Andrew like grow up, and to be a part of building a program where somebody could go and do it and
Yeah.
win at that level was huge. But no, and Nickerson had sold me on that vision in like October of 2014, and my first and last visit. And it just came, and seeing all that come to be was really, really big. But yeah, it goes way back. And we
And it's cool to see because now the dynamic has changed so much in the recruiting game with
mhm,
with transfer
yeah.
portal. And that was, you mentioned Alirez, and I think one of his
Mhm,
statements that he said after he won the national championship was like how important it is to stay where you
yeah.
are. Like you see so many kids
Yeah.
these days, like they go for the NIL money or they're
Mhm,
changing schools because oh, I'm not getting enough playing time, so I'm just gonna
mhm,
switch and go somewhere else. And I loved how Alira has talked about that after to like one of the reporters was how
yeah.
important it was that he stayed in Greeley and that was
Mhm,
he was gonna make it happen in Greeley and he did make it
mhm,
happen. And so to me it's a very distinct dynamic with you having gone through the recruiting process, 10 years ago, whatever it may be now,
feel
um,
old.
then
Mhm,
the current sector of athletes that are going through that process that when I talk to them, they're like NIL or transfer portal and how they went through that process. So it's cool to
yeah.
see kind of that the difference in dynamics from when you did through it and then kind of what other athletes that I've talked to in this current era have gone through. And it's to me,
Yeah.
it's again college. I feel like college athletics is gonna change. It's continuing
Mhm,
to change and evolve through the years. But I
mhm,
respect the to me, I'm a a sucker for old, I've been called old and I don't even I do things in an olden way. And so it's like, you
mhm,
know, it's I do respect that the past process as well. And now going into how it's evolving with NIL
mhm.
is
Yeah.
great to see how that process goes.
Yeah. And it's fun, and it's funny for me because
Yeah.
I kind of competed in both eras where like the last year of eligibility that I had was the first year of NIL, so
Yeah.
definitely not what it is now.
Yeah.
But like through that time, like the transfer portal became a thing when like during my career.
Yeah.
Um, like you could like athletes had much more mobility.
Yeah.
It was so a lot of those rules kind of came to fruition during my career. A couple of those rules helped me get of 7 years of college. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely it was an interesting time to be an
Yeah.
athlete. And with COVID, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
With something
I
it's not.
don't know that
Yeah.
there was a more interesting era of to be a college athlete in
Mhm.
history. So
And I
I'll
know
count
you said,
myself lucky for it.
yeah, and I know you said Coach Nickerson was an idol for you, cheered him on,
Mhm.
in middle school, and kind of that's what solidified that decision. So, can you talk to me about when you got to Northern Colorado, kind of how your relationship over those 7 years with Coach Nickerson evolved, and kind of how he helped to shape
Mhm.
your career, college career, as you were at UNC?
Yeah, no, me and Nickerson have a really special relationship because I think me and Rico and Devin Rothrock were like his first three recruits, and I don't remember who committed first. It was all within a couple of days.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I was part of Nickerson's first recruiting class and part of that first group of recruits that came underneath him in that
Mhm.
fall. So, me and him had been together for so long.
Yeah.
And I mean, like at the beginning, like program building, I've always said can be an ugly thing. Just, you're kind of like, Northern Colorado wasn't in the best spot when he took over,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of rebuilding that had to be done. And, there were a lot of thankfully, even in the beginning, we had a lot of pieces to where we could do it. Like I
Mhm.
remember Trent Noon, shout out Trent Noon.
Yeah.
But some of those guys, Trey Andrews, I'll shout a couple of those guys out. I know I'm
Yeah.
missing a few, but you know, it's program building is an ugly thing, and you go through a lot of tough times to do it. You go through a lot of seasons too, where as a team, like you struggle, where it's like hard to win duels,
Mhm.
hard to compete, and obviously we were competing at a high level in the Big 12.
Mhm.
But I think through that, like me and Nickerson have a really special relationship because we had gone through a lot of hard stuff. There's certainly been ups and downs in our relationship, but I think we think about I think loyalty is a big thing, and like I really trusted Nickerson. I really trusted that he loved me, that he loved and still loves me beyond who I was as a wrestler. Like the dude really cared about me as a human, and the dude
Yeah.
still really cares about me as a human. Like I
Yeah.
still talk to him.
Yeah.
And I think that was big for me, especially the ups and downs, because I had to learn because you have to learn how to handle those situations as an adult. Like,
Yeah.
we're you're dealing with and I was his captain for I think 3 or 4 years. Like, you had to learn how to have those tough conversations. You had to learn how to handle these tough things and manage, this talented group of guys from a bunch of different backgrounds and find a way to reach them and find a way to ultimately try to do what's best for the different individuals on the team with
Mhm.
what's in the best interest for, the group of guys you have as a whole, the whole team, and
Yeah.
what's getting you where you need to go. I think, I had a huge opportunity to do that with Coach Nickerson, where I think I don't know if I was in a different situation if I would have gotten to reap those fruits from all those hard things that go into building up a program
Yeah.
into one that's pretty darn relevant. So
No,
I mean,
Coach Nickerson's great, man. I mean,
yeah.
even my interactions with him, and obviously I have a different interaction with him than you had, and
Mhm.
you guys were very close and in
Mhm.
that regard. And but I mean, he's definitely, and that's the type of coaches, and that's great to hear from your perspective of the guy really cares, and I could see that
Yeah.
too when I interact with him. The guy cares about people, not
Mhm.
about, oh, whether won, a
Yeah.
duel, you're a good wrestler. He cares about you as a person, and that's great to
Mhm.
see. Kind of those kind of coaches. We need more of those kinds of people, in my eyes,
Yeah.
that actually care about the players and believe in the players rather than
Mhm.
just thinking about them a wrestler as another recruit coming in that regard. So
Yeah.
that's great to see. And so um,
Yeah.
then you've kind of now transitioned out of wrestling into kind of your adjunct instructor. You're a sports
Mhm.
psychologist out there.
I can't claim psychologist. I do have to make that correction.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
My master's degree is in sports psychology. Yeah. So I'm not, so the difference between me and a sport psychologist, if I were
Okay.
to put it simply, would be that I'm not clinical. So
Gotcha.
like I
Gotcha.
can't practice, like, so I can't practice
Gotcha.
psychology. So like I do meet with student athletes, but it's like you would classify it as the lowest level of care
Gotcha.
that you could receive, but just where I've kind of put myself, it makes it really easy to refer them. I do have a really good understanding of that context, and
No, and I
I can
apologize. Thank
help
you for
advocate on a
clearing
lot
that
of
up.
different levels.
Yeah, no,
So
and I appreciate you clearing that up as well.
yeah, I mean ethically I have to. So
Yeah.
it, yeah, I can't. I
Uh,
was like, yeah. So
yeah.
the
So
training and education that like PhD level sports psychologists go through is a little different. And
sure.
when I'm a licensed professional counselor, I will be clinical, and so I'll be able to do more. But until then, I'm kind of working in a different way. But it's been effective so far.
Sounds good. Yeah. So can you expand on that a little bit? Kind of your transition out of
Hmm.
as a D1 athlete to now you're assisting student athletes, you're
Hmm.
guest lecturing, teaching
Hmm.
in the higher ed space. Can you talk about your transition from that to where you are now?
Yeah, that was one of the best times of my life. I actually wanted to be a bike mechanic for a little while. So I was
Yeah.
fixing mountain bikes and road bikes over in Western Colorado.
Gotcha.
It's a big mountain biking hotbed.
Yeah.
So I did want to get a sweet mountain bike, and if I could fit it in my room and bring it down, I'd show it off for everybody right now. But
Yeah.
no, I wasn't ready to get into my career right off the bat. Like I said, I've been in college 7 years, and I wanted to be able to do some of the things I enjoyed that I hadn't had time to do. I wanted to hunt. I wanted to have the time to mountain bike. I wanted to settle into like life without sport and really have a firm foundation there and set my feet down on good ground and be really
Yeah.
secure in who I was outside of sport, which, through being a master's student in sports psychology, I felt like I had a firm grasp, but at the same time, it's like it's a real push when push comes to shove moment, and I didn't know how I'd handle it until I was in it. So I did kind of want to screw around and take a gap year, if you want
Gotcha.
to call that. It did end up being about a year, but how I fell into this situation at CMU is kind of dumb luck, honestly.
Gotcha.
I'll be I'll be really honest. I had some connections there, and remember somebody who somebody who worked in athletics or in the performance lab at CMU sent me a picture of this flyer for Mavs Mentality, which I remember I saw the flyer and was like, oh, like Bears Strong at UNC was very similar.
Yeah.
That the counseling staff at UNC had kind of put together, and so I reached out and was like, hey, I'd love to volunteer some time. I'm around. This is like my research area. Done a lot of work in athletic identity research wise, and
Yeah.
so I'd love to invest in the student athletes here. And then it just kind of took off. I met Annalie Walker's the director of advocacy and health at CMU, and ever since then it's kind of been this big process of kind of here's the theme of this podcast is program building, but kind of getting to come alongside her and kind of help build up the resources that are available to student athletes here, which eventually turned into me starting like getting an LLC and getting contracted to do that work. So I get to do a lot of different stuff around the student athletes, which I can definitely talk about the different ways in which I do that, because I do it a little differently because I'm not clinical and my scope requires me to do that. So, but it's been one of the most wild rides of my entire life,
Mhm.
close to as wild as building a program at UNC
Yeah, but
wrestling wise. So yeah, I do a lot of different stuff and it's a lot of fun. I'm very, very busy. I
and
sleep very little sometimes.
I'm the same way right now, going through my dissertation process with my PhD out here. So
Oh
the
boy.
sleep factor is mute right now on my end. Uh,
Yeah.
but as well, but it's no, the program building. He talks about that, building programs building the program out at UNC, now building or
Mhm.
helping assisting building the resources in the program out
Yeah.
at CMU. But I feel like that's the great thing is that
Mhm.
building that program is so satisfying in the end once you have it built, right? You mentioned
Oh, yeah.
when you saw Lirez win the national title, how
Mhm.
satisfying that was, knowing where you and Coach Nickerson had started in
Mhm.
2014, 2015, and going through that process. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's so great to see kind of how you've evolved and kind of how you've been able, the success that you had at your high school level into college and building that program, and the success that you're having now and going to continue to have at Colorado Mesa in building that out. So it's been great to see.
Thank
But
you.
speaking on that, and building programs out and kind of going through that process, what's in you, whether it's your wrestling career or whether it's just in life in general, what's kind of the best piece of advice that you've gotten as you've gone through your high school career into college and now as well?
Um, I I I think buying into a process,
Mhm.
and I think I think I'll be speaking very broadly here. I think
Sure.
the temptation exists that you want to have everything and you want to have it right now. I think we see that with transfer portal and NIL and college athletics, but I think you see that in terms of society at large in different ways too. I mean, it's like everybody wants everything right now, and for a large part of life, you can get it. I mean, how many Instagram reels can you scroll through at once,
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
just those dopamine hits, I mean, then when was the last time we had to look for directions on a map? Like
Yeah.
our iPhone told us where to go.
Yeah.
I think, I think there's a lot of things in the world geared towards, wanting it all now and instant gratification. And I think it's a little harder to buy into a process. I think like understanding growth and the slow monotony that goes into building something that's going to last, like understanding that it's not always easy and giving yourself grace in those moments and those things too. Like,
Yeah.
things are going to be up and down, especially when you're thinking about long-term growth.
Yeah.
But, as long as you can see the upward trajectory and that you're rowing the boat in the right direction, like, that's the thing. I think that's the thing that really matters. Like, understanding that it's going to take time. I'm not one to think that most good things are going to come really fast. I think that I think that the things worth having usually take time to get and time to build, and those end up usually being the best things. So, it's buying into that process and giving yourself a good understanding of that process goes a long way in terms of doing something meaningful. And I think that's very broad,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
I think that applies across a lot of contexts, and whether it's in athletics or not, and definitely applies to life outside of athletics, is at least through the lens that, in my worldview that I've seen. So
Sure.
I think
So
that's, I don't know, that I use that analogy a lot when meeting with student athletes, and it comes up a lot because a lot of student athletes come in, they're like, all right, fix me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not that good. It doesn't work that way.
yeah.
And so getting them to buy into even a process of growth for themselves is usually the first step. So
And
And
that's kind of what is that what you would tell that kind of leads into, the biggest reason in starting this podcast is I wanted to bring student athletes on, and I'm
mhm,
big on, and I've seen kids in community here. I coached high school football in Greeley, and I saw
mhm,
those kids were like, I want to get to the next level. I want to, be
mhm,
at that level. And so the reasoning behind starting this podcast was getting athletes on to talk about or inspire the younger generation of
mhm,
athletes coming up. And so what's I mean, no, you talked about believing in the process is kind of the best piece of advice
mhm.
that you got throughout your career. Um, and you mentioned that with your student athletes, but if you're
Yeah,
talking to high school kids or youth, even youth wrestlers or youth athletes in general, football, wrestling, whatever it may be, um,
yeah.
what's one piece of advice you would give them if they want to get to that D1 level, or if they want whatever they want to get to in life? What piece of advice what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I mean, best piece of advice I would give them is to put themselves out there and see how it goes.
Gotcha.
If you want to compete at that level, you got to, I mean, you got to go out and see where you stack up against the best guys in America, whether that's on a football field or wrestling. I think I can speak more to wrestling. I don't
Yeah,
understand the youth football
side of things.
side or how that's all shifted, but I mean, if I was talking to a youth wrestler, like I really want to go D1, I'd be like, are you going to Fargo?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to, like, are you going to go to Virginia Beach? Or are you going to go, like, are you going to go test yourself against those guys? Because, that's the real benchmark. And it's not so much in the way of, the winning. I'm not going to sit here and say that the like winning those matches doesn't matter. It certainly does.
Mhm.
But are you willing to go out and compete against guys like that? And I think things I look at now, especially being involved in college wrestling now at CMU a little bit, I've gotten to be in there with them. I think I look at a lot of things that aren't necessarily measurable. It's like I want to know if you'll return a guy when he gets to his feet when you're on top. I want to know if you'll keep wrestling on the edge and try to score. I think if you can do those, and I think for high school wrestlers, just learning how to compete,
Mhm.
and going and doing the hard things and putting themselves out against the best guys. Those that the best that's the best piece of advice that I give to a young wrestler, because those are the things that are a lot harder to teach, and you got to kind of go out there and just do.
Mhm.
And so
No, I mean, that's great advice in that regard, right? Just being able
mhm,
to, obviously you said, well, winning is an important piece of that, just but you'll
yeah,
be noticed even if you're able to compete with and go toe to toe with some of these guys at the best. But
mhm,
putting yourself, it's great to say, putting yourself out there, and if you want to be the best, you want to be at that level, you got to compete against the best. And
yeah,
that's a great um forte into
yeah,
saying into that. So that's great that's great.
yeah,
That's a great piece of advice for younger wrestlers and
mhm,
athletes in general as well. And I feel like that advice kind of can overarch a lot of different contexts, a lot of different sports, and a lot of different.
yeah.
So that's great to that you
And
said.
I
So
and I think the other thing that, and it just popped into my head,
yeah.
is I think the other piece of advice that I would give like any young athlete is you never know when it's all going to come together,
Mhm.
and I'll make that make sense here. But, I, speaking from my career, I was, until I was probably a junior in high school, like my physical development and maturity and stuff didn't really meet a point to where I was super successful until late in my high school career. You never know when all of that's going to come together, and it could come together fast. And I also think to different times in my college career too. I think right before COVID in 2020, I think I had another one of those moments, but it was, but it's like careers are long, careers are hard. You're putting in a lot of work, and a lot of the work's monotonous.
Mhm.
and everybody wants it to pay off, and it doesn't pay off immediately.
Yeah.
I think, there's got to be like there's got to be like naive optimism
Yeah.
in that, and that it's going to pay off somehow, some way. You don't know when, you don't know how, but it will.
Mhm.
And and I think that's the other piece of advice. Like just stay in the fight, just like, because it could come together.
Yeah.
Like there's a certain amount of faith that you have to have with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't guarantee that it will, like, but if you can stay optimistic that it could, then there's a lot better chance that ultimately that it will. And then everything kind of changes pretty quick. So
And it's like you mentioned, that you look at the current realm of athletes and how it's all about instant gratification. I think that I look back
mhm.
to Gino Auriemma, the UConn basketball coach, talking about,
Yeah.
like he'll bench players if they're not cheering for their teammates, if they're not improving,
Mhm.
if they're not growing. They might not be great at the moment, but he'll still play them
Mhm.
if he sees the progression versus somebody who might be really good he might not play them because they want all the points for themselves or they want all the minutes for
Yeah.
themselves. And so that
Mhm.
taking back to that in terms of I mean, that's another great piece of advice there is like just waiting, trusting, having that faith, and using the faith and the spiritual aspect of it to
Yeah.
forward in that regard.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
so, but
Yeah.
that's all the time we have for this episode of the Athlete Insights podcast. Jacob, I want to thank you for coming on, and sharing your advice and sharing your insights and thoughts, about your career. And obviously, you provided some really great context with the advice and all that. And so I'll have
Yeah.
your social media handles and everything. I'll have Jacob's social media on the video, and you can follow Jacob through those channels, as well. And you can follow our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts. I'll have it up on there as well. So make sure to follow, and you can follow again. Make sure to follow Jacob as well on all the social media channels. I'll have that up, as well. So Jacob, thank you so much again for taking the time and coming on and speaking with me. And we'll see you next time.